To expand a little bit on the coming out side of things, it is a process. You're constantly having to come out to different people, and I remember finding it very hard to understand where you were coming from, because like we had a few interesting conversations at the time where I had told my mum had asked a question about something you'd done or something you'd said, and it led into the conversation with her that you were bisexual, because you came out as bisexual before you came out as non-binary. And then my dad had come out, because bearing in mind this all happened over lockdown, but we had built up like a support bubble with my parents because we're ill and we needed the support. And he'd come out and you'd started to wear not only the nail polish, but you'd started to put lipstick on and started to explore makeup. And my dad had gone home and mentioned it to my mum, and my mum rang me and said, why your dad's in the loo? I thought I'd ring you and see if I can, shall I tell him that it's because Tim's bisexual? Sorry, I've just used your old name. That's really bad of me.
That's okay. It was a blurry point, and I was technically still Tim then.
You were, yeah. And I still feel really bad about it though. So this was the question, and you were like, no, I don't want to tell him. And actually, why has she not told him already? And I was like, because we don't tell people secrets in our family. It's not ours to tell. And you were really annoyed because in your family, it's kind of like the family grapevine. Someone finds something out and it gets passed along the route. And you were kind of expecting that to happen so that you didn't have to come out to them. But I was there going, but I'm not going to tell anyone unless you, because I don't want to out you, and neither does my mum. And we went through that same thing again when I finally told them about you being non-binary. They then rang me up and said, well, what do we say if Debbie, who's my sister, says anything to us? And you were like, why don't they just tell her? I mean, they know, they can tell. And like, I was coming at it from a point of view of none of us want to out you without your permission, but you were like, I kind of want some of you to just spread the So how did you feel about all of that? Because I remember being very, very confused at that time.
I think for me it was almost like I was still exploring how I felt and what it meant for me. So I was in sort of two minds, I suppose. Part of me was like, yeah, tell people, don't tell people. And part of me was like, don't tell people, because you know, if they don't know, they don't really question it. And also I think in some ways part of me likes the rebellion side to rebel and just go, keep them guessing, you know.
You do like that, yes.
I think there's that aspect to me which is like, well, you know, if they don't know, they don't really know. But I think the more people that know, the more people I expect to tell other people in some ways. I think, I don't know, you know, your family don't seem to gossip.
Well, they do.
They don't seem to gossip in the traditional.
Yeah.
Somebody tells somebody, and somebody else something else.
Well, they do tell some things, but I think in some respect they knew how important it was that this was done with your consent, and I think that was the difference.
Yeah.
But you were like, I don't want to have to deal with this. I kind of just want them to pass it on. And
I think I didn't want to tell them myself because it was too hard to explain. Because I hadn't actually pinned down what I felt was closest to you know. I think, you know, if you just say transgender, sometimes that's just the same. That's, for me, I feel just the same. I'm moving away from the gender I was at birth. And I think, you know, in some ways that's a nice catch-all term, but I think we have terminology, and like I said, there's a more of a colour palette of different ways to express your gender and how you feel about it. For me, non-binary just felt too simple. Transgender woman didn't feel completely like that either, so I'm sort of somewhere in between those two aspects, so which is harder to explain to people than
one or the other,
than if you're a binary choice. So if you're going from a male to a female, that's you're going from a woman, you're going from a man to a woman, and for a lot of people that makes sense, and vice versa. If you're going from a woman to a man, that's a binary choice. And I think throughout transgender history, there's always been that thing to go through the binary choices.
It's hard for people to wrap their head around this non-binary idea, and I think one of the things we talked about was you were worried about telling people because you didn't want to tell people I'm this and then it potentially change while you were exploring.
Absolutely.
And
I would have felt like a fraud to myself that I would have said, oh, I'm a trans woman, and then gone, well, no, not quite a trans woman. I think